Alright, so with this sample that we are seeing here, of course it is black at the moment, that is for silhouette studies or silhouette identification of the character overall look. Okay, so normally when as a beginner or even an artist or you know a sculptor and so on and so forth, the moment you start you will want to straight away get an end result that is going to show like, ah, this is the beautiful drawing and all that. Who doesn't want it, right? But here is where we are going to do, a lot of them will straight away start doing the details, and you know they will want to see all this beautiful carvings that is coming in to define the shapes and so on and so forth, right? So today I'm going to talk about how do you want to start off this modeling or this sculpting session, right, in order for you to obtain all the steps before you do your detailing and so on and so forth. Okay, so the basic fundamentals, right, to identify and to work with your sculpting tool. Okay, so as you can see here, I'm just doing some little these are the things that you as a starter or as a beginner will start doing. You will go ahead and then add in all these details. Okay, you'll be looking at all these details here. The form should be like this, and I need to have all the creases around here. The muscles needs to be correct, and eventually everything goes wrong, and you'll find it very frustrating. Okay, so don't do this straight away. I do that as well at times. Okay, so we try to avoid this, and then we focus on doing, I would say, the blockout stages. So a lot of them will kind of like neglect this blockout stages. So how do I start? Okay, so the blockout stages is fairly essential because it will minimize your mistakes, and it will first identify the visual language. All right, the overall look and feel to be first seen before you go ahead and do every single adjustment in your character. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Cool. So as you can see, this is what I started off with blockout. Of course, I put key landmarks. Okay, maybe a little bit of detail just to please my heart. All right, to say, hey, look, please my mind that things are kind of like working out eventually, but this is not enough. I'll come back and then do detailing. Like for instance, if you look here, it needs to be more fine-tuned and so on and so forth, but some sort I have a good start not to begin with. All right, so this is what we're going to do, and once you have already done the blockout stages, what you're going to do is you're going to add in your landmarks and flush out the um, big shapes. All right, big mark areas that is forming the components well enough, like the nose, the eyebrows, the eye socket. How does it flow in? See, this may not be the perfect eyeballs and so on and so forth. uh, I mean, your eye bags and all that, it's not perfect, but at least it is there for you to start off with. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
shall we start?
Okay.
Everyone have loaded up your ZBrush?
Yeah.
Okay, so like how you have in your, I'm just going to save this. I'm just going to leave this. I'll just start off. Okay, brand new, initialize. Bloop. Yes. Okay, when you initialize, practically it will, every time that you complete or if you start off your sculpting, you say it is gone miserably bad, and then you think like, oh, okay, so how do I do that? I mean, how do I reset the entire ZBrush by itself, so that it starts from 0. So practically how do you do that is you go to preferences, you initialize your ZBrush. So when it said initialize, meaning it is resetting the entire document, the entire canvas, and practically the all your models that has been gone miserably bad has been all taken away and it start off fresh. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, so working with this, first and foremost, you see there's a couple of undos around here. Don't worry about that. You can always go back here. Again, these are few things that you need to do under preferences. So quick save, delete all the quick save. All right. The reason why you're deleting quick save is it is doing a catch files, or it's catching memories from here, and eventually you will see your drive space is going down and down and down because it is constantly saving and saving and saving. Got it?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So
Yeah.
just be clear with that. Okay. So if you wanna start off with something like from an empty space like this, number one that you have to do is hit your comma key, right, to load up your lightbox, right, comma, load up the lightbox. And what you can do is you can start off with a simple Dynamesh. So I'm using Dynamesh most of the time. I will teach you how to use Z-Sphere as well. Okay, so let's go with Dynamesh because you can see the sculpt straight away. All right, so look for 32. I'll start off with a low poly first. Okay, so we are going to do block out. Once you do the block out, it's like markings. Then we will slowly sculpt in the head and as well as the dorsals and so on. Okay, so this will be the exercise. Eventually you will make a lot of mistakes here, right? So have we all created this?
Yeah.
All right, so when you start off with this, number one is you need to kind of like merge all these flat objects or the base objects to form a character or a shape, right? So think about it in that manner. So for instance, now if you see two heads, or if you want to see just the head, if you just want to focus on the head, first is to see your skull here. All right, how does a skull form? So skull forms with the your the skeletal that is covering your sculpt. All right, and then you have the jawline here, that is the lower part of your face. Got it?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So with that happening, you know how to rotate the canvas.
Yep.
All right, that part you all know, huh? So rotating the canvas to zoom in and zoom out. To zoom in and zoom out is practically, again I will repeat this. You move first by holding alt key plus hold. All right, don't let go. Hold alternate key and then move the canvas by holding on the empty space. Move it and then let go your alternate as you move. Don't let go your drawing tablet or your mouse. As you let go, now you can just zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out. Okay. Once you get used to it, it will just come naturally. Okay. You will see the axis, which is quite tiny at this point of time. You will see the axis around here, or if you want to see even further, press W. Q is for edit or drawing. Sorry. Q is for draw. W is for move, and as you hover around this these components or the icons around here, you will then see the shortcut key that has been flashed out to you. Okay, the one you'll understand, huh? Okay,
Yeah.
all right, cool. So once that is done, now let's start. Okay, every time that you create something, it will become a tool. Right, it is under the tool. It will just show up here. All right, anything that you're working on or any sort of clay or object that you're working on, it will show here. All right, Now as you drop down, or when talking about that, right? So if you hover through this object around here, or the icon that is displaying here on the tool set, you will then see the information of that particular polygon. I mean the particular mesh, where it shows the polys, the points, hidden polys, and so on and so forth, as you can see here displayed in this call out icon here, right? Or zoomed up information. Make sense?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
So if you want to save, let's go with save. All right, you can save this as a tool, right? So when you hit save as, it now will save as ZTL. Remember, ZTL is practically, it would not have any of these histories laid out. It will just be an a model. That's about it. Okay, but you can still sculpt on it. It would not have all this information of undos, as opposed to what you can see here under the files. If you save this, all right, save as, it will then give you the project. All right, ZBrush project meaning everything that you have here, which means all your history from your doings and so on and so forth, or all your modifying and so on and so forth, will be saved in that particular file as a project file. But it's expensive because it becomes bigger and bigger. For a start, you all should go with project files. You can kind of like work with both ZTL project file as a tool, as well as ZPR the project file. Make sense? Okay,
Yeah.
see and compare first, right, before you go ahead and super duper details and so on and so forth. All right, cool. Any questions on that? Happy dopey?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you import, so import meaning there's a couple of files here, right? GOZ format and OBJ, Maya files and meshes and so on and so forth. These are the options that is given to you. So the universal one is the OBJ. So every time that you are doing with any blockouts that you have done in, or modeling that you have already done in 3D software, you can just bring it in. Make sure you know your designated area, the folder that has been attached, and then work on that. Right? So that's one. We'll talk about this even further if you later on. But these are you'll be wondering, hey, if I do in Blender or Maya or 3ds Max, how do I bring it in? And then you see the professionals sculpting from that. It's like, how do they do that? So this is how they do it. Import under the tool, then only you can bring in the object or the model that you have already done there. OBJ will contain all the UV information and so on and so forth. We'll dive deeper into that eventually. Okay, then you've got this tools here, subtool. Subtool is like a layer system, right? So now that you have already created this sphere, what you can do is you can hold control, and then you can do a copy of this object. Can you see that? By using your move tool. Making sense?
You press control.
Yeah, hold control. Okay, I'm going to go back with this tool that has been selected, the sphere that has been selected. So hold control and just drag it up. So this is copying under the same roof. Making sense? You can move this. See, when you're controlling like this, right, when you do a copy like this, you know what happens? This two becomes one object. Okay, it will merge as one object. Am I making sense? Right?
Uh,
So okay, let's you will see this even clearer as I move on from here. So in order for you to copy this, you can just copy this object just to move it around, or to kind of like start off with the shape, the basic shape, right? So if let's say I go to draw, see one is masked, one is highlighted. So the mask, the origin will be masked, or anything that you copied from the original object will be masked, and then the new one will be highlighted. So practically you can only sculpt on here. So something like this. See, um, let me move. Example, how do I get this shortcut key to get the hotkey is by holding spacebar and then you see draw size example, right? I can only sculpt on here. So masking is to mask the areas that you don't want to disturb or disrupt, okay? And then you can just work on the objects that has been unmasked. You know what I mean? This part you all
Yeah.
understand? Okay? So
Yeah.
it's similar to Photoshop. Alright? So if you control, you click outside, it will do an invert selection. Okay? So control, hit, don't hit on the object on an empty space, right? So it will select, invert the selection. But if you do outside, like just now, how do I unselect masking? Okay? If I want this two not to be, or none of these objects to be masked, so what I do is I will do a selection like this by holding control and letting it go, right? So when you let go, now this two becomes one. See, now if I move,
Sir, I cannot copy.
can I? So this two will be read as one. I'm just smoothing. Okay, so that is one. And since we are working on Dynamesh, or before I go into Dynamesh, see what happens to the subtool. The subtool now shows that instead of just a sphere, now this two has become one object, merged as one object. You can see here. Did you get this?
Yeah.
Wait, so how do you copy the sphere again?
Make sure that you select your on the what they call on the object selection like this, right? You select the object, use the move tool or scale or move. When you hit on this move tool, right? When you hit on this move tool, you'll see this pivot point will appear. Correct? You hold on this arrow, hold control, and then drag it. Okay? You hold on and then you drag it, and this will then be another merged object. So it's still as one. It's going to be one. All right. You just have to move first to ensure that you get the shapes first, like how I'm getting now. See that? And whenever you do your your copy on that particular object on the same subtool, all right, it will be the origin will be grayed out, which is will be masked out, and then the new one will be highlighted. So you can work on the new one, or you can sculpt on the new one, whereas the one that is grayed out, which is masked, all right, cannot be adjusted unless you unmask it. Okay, so it gives you the opportunity for you to adjust or modify the new ones that is, or the new clays that you're adding in. So it's practically your first you're starting with a bald or rounded clay mesh, and then you're adding in, you're taking another one more piece of clay and then putting it on top. That's what you're doing. You're stacking things together and then slowly starting to form, like how you do it with your normal clay. Can
Yeah.
Yeah.
did I give you a thorough explanation or still confused? If you're confused, please ask. Can I?
Yeah.
It takes a couple of a couple of hours of practice. Then you kind of like, oh, okay, I get the idea now. All right. So when you're playing with Dynamesh, all right. So if now once you have already clicked this, if let's say you want to do a mask, okay, how do you do mask? Mask is very important. So mask is to see the selection where you want to work on. If you want to, that is practically the idea of masking lah. So if let's say I just want to work on here, or if you have any emblem that you can work with, maybe you want to have like you change this to drag select and change the alpha to perhaps any sort of alpha that you have already created, like a logo or whatever not, right? Like for instance, I want to do this, I can mask this area, okay, and mask this area will give you this. I can just move it, or I can just sculpt on that particular highlighted area so that the other components or the mask area will not be disturbed. Okay, you all got it, huh? That is practically mask lah in a nutshell. Right. Any questions?
So how do you unmask it?
Unmask meaning the entire thing,
Yeah, the
or
entire thing.
okay, just do hold control, right? Do this drag on the outside, right? Outside of this. See, let me just go back here. Let's see, lah. Okay, I've masked this. Okay, let me just go here. If I hold control, I can just change this. Say I don't want alpha. Say this is my mask area, like this, right? If I want to unmask this, is practically you can just do a selection outside by holding control, same way of masking, but on an empty space. Got it?
Oh, yeah.
All right. So masking, if it's here on stroke like this, all right, so which free hand stroke, okay, then you can practically color or kind of like a paint on the surface and then mask that particular component. Can so if you want to unselect it, or if you want to do like I want to invert, you just click here, it will invert, or you just click on an empty space, it will invert. If you don't want any of this mask, you just do a marquee selection like that, done, by holding control. Can
Yeah.
Alright, cool. So couple of ways of doing mask. Another way is you can try again if holding control. Anything that you're doing by holding control, or maybe shift, control and shift. Control shift is for selection, which also can isolate certain components, right? By holding control and then you know clicking on the stroke, it will give you an option for you to do like if you have any logos, any specific logos, or any writings or shapes that you have done in Illustrator, or you have made it into a grayscale black and white, alright, then you want to do like a tattoo, then you go for drag select. If you want to do dotted, you can just try all these options that you have here. So you can even have another option, like for instance the lasso, or the curve, or the circle and the rectangle that you have here, extra stuff given to you. This is practically, if you're using lasso, you can do that. Okay, so instead of having it in a rectangle shape like this, at the moment it is rectangle. Rectangle is going to give you this, right? Like a marquee selection. Got it?
Yeah.
All right. If you use lasso, it's practically like lasso in Photoshop. If you have curve, that means it is going to go like 1, We're just going to do like holding alternate and making a curve. See that? So say whoop, holding alternate, to. It is, it will kind of like it create a mask with that particular selection range lah. Okay, then you go ahead like that. See that? It will give you a different terms of or different way of masking the surfaces and so on and so forth. Okay, can see, please try out. All right, we're not going to go super in depth here now, just just for masking, but this is practically the options that you get with masking. Okay, direct select, then normally you need an alpha. Okay, clear? Any questions? Hello?
No.
Can everyone?
Yeah. Yeah, for now.
Okay, cool. So that's that. And then when you are playing with Dynamesh, right? See, when you do masking outside, just now we have known how to, I've already shown you how to get into masking, how do you want to come out from masking certain components and so on and so forth, right? Now, if you're working with Dynamesh, you practically do a masking outside here. This will then combine these objects together. See the difference between this, what we had now, just now, right? When we had this copied over, or when we did another copy of the origin, so you get these two to be stacked up together. And when you do any of the sculpting, oh, since we are Dynamesh, you will still see this line here. See, no matter how much you sculpt, maybe it looks okay, then when you smoothen it, it will show the lines. Okay, you may not want to have that line, alright, because it's still treating this as a separate object. It's just stacked up together. So in order for you to make sure that this two is combined properly, so you do with Dynamesh, this will help you. Dynamesh will always help you with this. Hold control and do a mask outside. Now if I do smoothing, everything becomes one piece. Can see?
Yeah.
Alright, did you all try? Yes? No? Guys, can I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, so this part is how Dynamesh works. Yeah, I will dive deep into Dynamesh eventually now. Okay, so just be careful every time you do this. A Dynamesh is practically like I said last week. A Dynamesh will try to distribute the segments evenly across the whole mesh. So it doesn't want to have any stretches and so on and so forth. And as the name states, it will try to um, give you an even mesh distribution so that when you sculpt, everything will be properly done. But Dynamesh also will add more and more and more segments or polys. Okay, you just have to be careful with that. So in order for you to adjust that, just go to geometry. Geometry is practically the information that you give, all the information of this particular geometry. Okay, so what you want to do, or how do you want to um, kind of like label it in meaning, or what kind of form it is. Is it a Dynamesh? Is it not a Dynamesh? Is it a well distributed mesh, or it's going to be stretchy, or how do you want to uh, kind of like optimize it and so on and so forth will come in here. Details and stuff like that, everything will come under geometry. So you want to add, like, say control D, you will see division is eventually added on. You will see this bar, the green bar will straight away pop by control D or command D. Anyone using Mac? Hello?
I'm not using.
Anyone else? No one is using Mac, right? Okay.
No.
Alright. So if nobody is using Mac, then it's a lot more easier. Everything is about control and alternate. Alright. So if you control D, so you'll get a division. See, I've got about 3 level of division. This is practically adding up the poly counts. So the polys. In here they call it polys. You see from here 3 divisions, it is much more smoother, but it is much more higher in terms of its poly. So here we start off with 3000. So control D is adding division or divide. Alright. So it gives you, it goes higher and higher and higher. The higher it goes, obviously it is the smoother it is, and you will get more real estate or practically a nicer surface for you to mesh in. I've already spoken about this last week. Alright, if you want to kind of like go back or go down, is shift D. Right, shift D will bring down the division, but it will still maintain the uh, will still have the subdivision level. So if you want to go high up, you press D. Okay, D is to show you, it's like going back and forth with low poly and high poly. Go low poly, high poly, low poly, high poly. And why is this important is the low poly is where you get the base structure, so that you don't get overwhelmed or don't get carried away with the amount of details. Like for instance, if you don't do this, if you don't understand much, right, say you go ahead and sculpt. Okay, you sculpt this and you make it like really 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 detailed. Okay, then you will see the poly count is about like 5 million, 20 million. So you get carried away with the surface without controlling your poly counts. Get what I mean? So what happens to that? So when you export it, one is the file size will become bigger. When you export it to any 3D programs and so on and so forth, the poly count is extremely high, and it's going to look like super crazy. uh, I would say the geometry is kind of like extremely dense. Making sense? The wireframes will be too dense, you can adjust that. So it will be too heavy, sometimes it will also lead to sort of like crashing the program by itself, because the amount of polycounts that you are exporting to another program from ZBrush. ZBrush may be light. For some reason it is running on Java, and they have already optimized, in the sense they have programmed it. I don't know what kind different kind of algorithm by itself. So it is very very light, even though you have gone to 5 million and 10 million polycounts, right? But you have to be very careful. Why is, you always have to remember, the higher the poly count is, of course you'll get more smoother surface, but at the same time you're adding in so much of unnecessary poly counts. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so these are the things that you need to be aware with. Okay, so now how do you go back? That's why when I go back from high poly, I will always look at low poly. So you have to train yourself. This one you have to train yourself, I can only say. Right, the reason why is, later when you project the high poly on a low poly, I'll show you guys how to do this. Right, when you project the high poly on a low poly, then it will, like, it will, you want to see where the details is going to go off. Like for instance, areas like this, when you have jaggedy lines, right, how do you want to kind of like adjust the areas, or you want to see, um, is it going to cache the information properly, or whether I'm going to have, like, horrible artifacts around here as I project from a high poly to a low poly, and so on and so forth. So always remember, high poly, low poly, just keep that in mind first. Don't beat yourself up too much, because eventually as you're working, you will know how everything goes. Okay, Couple of practices, then you get the idea. Okay? Are you all with,
Okay.
are you all with me? Can I?
Yeah.
Alright,
Yeah.
cool. So once you have that, remember as you move, see, it will then try to redistribute the surfaces in proper. So you can see, so they will automatically adjust. So that's what Dynamesh does. Okay, couple of things in Dynamesh. Dynamesh, you will see the resolution, right? The higher the resolution is, the more division it will add, more smoother it becomes, of course, right? But it will have a lot of crazy stuff here. So let's say I've gone to 400, right? So I just adjust something, just sculpt. Okay, now I do this. See, it will give you a smooth retopo or smooth distribution, but it will then constantly add, like, this is just division 0. See that? It straight away became, it will times 4. So which means the division that you had previously becomes like this. Super dense. You bring this to 3D program, this is practically a suicide mission. Okay? So don't go for super high resolution yet. Always come down, you can go down to 32. Go step by step. If it's every time that you are doing Dynamesh, every time that is Dynamesh that has been applied, it will times 4 the amount of the poly that is existing. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So these are things, technical stuff. Hang in there. You will get the idea behind it. Okay. Say, I'm gonna just do this again. See, it's nice, right? Because there's a lot, it's quite dense. Okay, so now if I smoothen it, see, it is nice in terms of its surface because it gives you so much of room for you to add in details and all that. That's why it's dense. Now if I do this again with lower resolution, it will tone down and maybe lose your details. This one you have to test out first, so don't go super detailed yet, but just do simple um, sculpting like this, just to try out and see. Okay, cool. Any questions? Right, so try out that. Okay, this is Dynamesh in a brief. Okay, you've got other stuff that is involved here, so you can have, like, groups, polish, project. All this will come in later on as we move on. Okay, so that's Dynamesh, and you're working with Dynamesh. Okay, now let's move on to back. You can just hide this tab. I'm going to go to Zremesher. Later I'll come back to this. Okay, now mind. I'll just show you in a nutshell. Zremesher is practically kind of like, it's adjusting the topology so that it gives you a super clean mesh distribution, or the topology is very clean rather than going haywire. Try to quad. These are quads. You kind of like, it will reduce the amount of poly counts in a way, in a proper manner, right? As well as it will give you a good distribution so that it's easier for if you're working in a 3D program. Let's put it that way, right? We'll come back to this one also same. You've got the legacy version, you've got, this is the, I don't know, the given version. So maybe you want to have the poly count to be reduced or adaptive. So okay, adaptive size is practically would determine, see, if I reduce this, right, and I Zremesh, you will see it will start to reduce the size, or you can even go for half. Please test it out and see. Now it's a lot more lesser as opposed to just now. Okay, you can off adapt, so you can hit Zremesh. See that? It's much more cleaner, the meshes is much more cleaner, but it's a lot more less dense than as opposed to just now. The higher the adaptive size is, then it becomes more and more and more dense and so on and so forth. Okay, click on this and try and see and understand it first. And I'm not gonna go just I know hold on to the technical terms alone, but it's good to know these are the basic fundamentals. Yes, a lot. I understand. Hang in there for a bit. Okay, can I shift F? See this inner field, shift F again if you want to go back forth to see the wireframes overlaid on the meshes. Okay, so that's that. I mean, it takes away a lot of fun when we talk about these technical terms and all that. Why you need to know this is you are not just a concept artist, you need to know all kind of like at least a little bit of the technical terms so that when you're working in a studio, you are well aware of what we are doing. Got it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Alright, cool. So now, if I want to start off with something like to sculpt a head, for instance, okay. So just now we spoke about how to combine stuff, and then we are quite happy with it. I'm just gonna do a brand new one. This part you all understand, huh? So I'm just gonna off this, so you guys can look at the technical terms back again. Alright, we'll come back for the next round.